Good day and welcome to Westchester Talk Radio, westchestertalkradio.com, produced by Sharc Creative, made possible by Entergy. Our special thanks to everybody over at Entergy for all they've done for our communities throughout the years and throughout the area. Also by Robeson Oil, the house that service built. By Lipolis Electric. Don't be left in the dark. Get Lipolis. And by Hightower Westchester. At Hightower Westchester, they manage your wealth to a fiduciary standard. Here on The Beat in Westchester, we are joined by Steve Greenberg, Siena College pollster, Siena College up in the Albany area, Siena Institute pollster, to be exact. Steve Greenberg, welcome back. You've had an interesting month, obviously, polling New Yorkers about the status of Governor Andrew Cuomo. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying it seems to me over the past 2 months when we first heard it would take about 60 days to conduct this investigation into the nursing home scandal, into alleged sexual harassment, etc. We're at about 60 days now. To me, the story has gone on the back burner, and yet the numbers you came up with show that it has not.
Well, it's been an interesting month for Governor Cuomo in terms of public perception of him. So here's the way I would describe it, John. Take a pint glass, put exactly 8 ounces of your favorite liquid in it, and then look at the glass. And you tell me, is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? Because that's essentially what voters told Governor Cuomo this month. Mm-hmm. If you're Governor Cuomo or if you're a Cuomo supporter, there's a lot of stuff in this poll that you can point to say he had a good month. His favorability rating is up net 8 points from last month. 58% of New Yorkers still approve of the job that Governor Cuomo is doing to address the pandemic. 49% of New Yorkers, not quite a majority, but a strong plurality, 49% of New Yorkers continue to say that the governor should not resign. So those are the good things in here for the governor. If you're a detractor of Governor Cuomo, what you would point to is say, well, yeah, okay, his favorability rating is up a little bit this month, but still, right now, only 44% of New Yorkers view Andrew Cuomo favorably, 48% view him unfavorably. It's still underwater. Right now, only 37% of New Yorkers say they're prepared to reelect Andrew Cuomo if he runs for reelection next year. 53% of New Yorkers say they would prefer someone else. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot.
Who might someone else be?
What's that?
Who might that someone else be?
Well, what we decided to do this month was, look, there's nobody on the Democratic side who's a declared candidate for governor. The governor has indicated that he's running for re-election, but he hasn't made a formal declaration, and certainly no other Democrat has. On the Republican side, we have 3 candidates who've already said they are running. You have Congressman Lee Zeldin from Long Island, you have the former Westchester County executive and 2014 opponent of Cuomo, Rob Astorino. And then last week, the son of the former mayor, Andrew Giuliani, announced that he's a candidate. So we have that. But so on the Democratic side, nobody has yet declared. So what we decided to do was do what we'll call a generic horse race. We said, we know that the governor's election is a year and a half away. But all things being equal, would you prefer to see a Democrat elected governor next year or a Republican elected governor? And 55 to 29% voters said they would prefer a Democrat to a Republican. So a 26-point edge for the Democrats in this generic ballot. Not surprising, John. You and I have talked about this a number of times. There are more than twice as many Democrats in New York as there are Republicans. 50% of the enrolled voters in the state are Democrats. Only 22% are Republicans. So that's what we see on a generic ballot. Then we said to the voters, what if I told you that the Democrat was Cuomo? Would you vote for Cuomo or the unnamed Republican? And Cuomo wins, but it's much tighter, 48 to 38%.
Which is not that good for him, right? Because
right. Absolutely. And then the third one we asked in this series was, what if we told you that the Democrat was the Attorney General, Leticia James? Would you support James or that unnamed Republican? And by a 46 to 29% margin, they say they would support James. So, generic Democrat versus generic Republican, the Democrat wins by 26. James versus generic Republican, James wins by 17. Cuomo versus generic Republican, Cuomo wins by 10. Mm-hmm. So we can see the difference between those three races, obviously 10 to 17 to 28. But what's really the difference? Two things. One is on the James race, a quarter of voters don't know. And that's not surprising because about 40% of New Yorkers either don't know who Attorney General James is or don't know enough about her to have an opinion. Whereas everybody virtually in New York knows who Andrew Cuomo is. But the other factor is independent voters. In the generic D versus R, independents side with the Democrats by 1 point, so essentially break even. In the James versus Republican, independents side with James by 3 points. Again, close to break even, but James up by 3. In Cuomo versus generic Republican, the independents side with the Republican by 18 points.
Wow.
So James does 21 points better in the horse race against the generic Republican than does Cuomo.
So the governor should be glad the election is a year and a half away, basically.
Absolutely. Look, the primary is 13 months away. It'll be next June. And we know there will be, well, there's likely to be a Republican Party, as we just talked about, but there's a primary. But there's also almost certainly going to be a Democratic primary, whether Andrew Cuomo runs for re-election or not. I mean, the last 2 times he ran for re-election, he was challenged from the left in a Democratic primary. And in both of those elections, he won handily.
Now, as we look back at the genesis of the investigations into the governor, not to promote any conspiracy theories here, but my first thought was Leticia James, a Cuomo ally, supposedly is running these investigations. Sounds like somebody might be running for governor, for the Democratic nomination for governor besides Andrew Cuomo. She has to love these numbers.
Well, I would think on the wearing her political hat, I would assume she does. Look, the Attorney General is in a very unique position right now. She is in charge of this investigation into sexual harassment, the book deal, other things regarding Governor Cuomo. She's also in the midst of an investigation, along with Manhattan DA Cyrus Vance, of Donald Trump.
Right.
So there you have the Attorney General of New York State saying, hey, look, Republicans, I'm investigating your most hated Democrat. Hey, Democrats, I'm investigating your most hated Republicans. So she gets to play nonpartisan, non-political, do her job as Attorney General, pursuing both of these investigations. It's a great place for her to be right now.
All right, so let's say nothing happens to Andrew Cuomo in the end. He's exonerated. Doesn't this make Tish James look bad?
Well, look, we have to see what her report says. I would be very surprised if she issued a report that completely exonerated Governor Cuomo. Anything can happen. Maybe that's what she will have found through her investigation. My guess is, according to public reports, her 2 lead investigators that she hired for this have interviewed scores of witnesses, have looked at, lots and lots of documents. My guess is, prosecutors who go investigating usually find something.
Mm-hmm. Or it could be she might want to hit Andrew Cuomo hard enough so that maybe he's knocked out of office by her in a primary. Not just yet, not have a hand in his removal, but be able to have enough out there about him, enough negative information about there and accusations about him, enough left up in the air hanging like a hanging Chad that she goes up against him in the primary, and this is what she uses to beat him.
Look, anything can happen. My guess is that the Attorney General is looking at this and saying the best politics for me is to do the best job that I can do on these investigations and go where the facts lead me and be as open and transparent about it and, explain it to the voters and then let the voters decide.
Mm-hmm. Steve Greenberg is with the Siena Research Institute, pollster at the Siena Research Institute at Siena College outside Albany. Steve, vaccinations in the state of New York, you looked into that too. I would think that New Yorkers overwhelmingly would say, let's get vaccinated, let's do this, let's do what we think is right. What do the numbers show?
Sure. Well, among the sample of registered voters that we spoke to for this survey, 66% of them say they have already been vaccinated. Another 15% say they intend to get vaccinated.
So that would give this state herd immunity right there, right? 66-15, just about.
But 17% of voters still say they do not plan to get vaccinated, up a little bit from last month when it was 14%.
Mm-hmm.
But we also then asked voters, we said that there's a law being proposed that would require college students to be vaccinated before they could return to school in the fall. And do you support or oppose that? And there is strong support for that. 2-1, by a margin of 62 to 32%, the voters of New York support a law that would require college students to be vaccinated. We do have a large partisan divide. That is, 79% of Democrats support such a law. Independents evenly divided, 45 to 45. And Republicans oppose it, but not overwhelmingly. By a 53 to 43% margin, they oppose it. But what I think is interesting, we often talk about partisan differences on issues. We also often talk about racial differences on issues. On this issue, zero racial difference. 62% of Black voters, 61% of Latino voters, and 63% of white voters all support a law to require college students to get vaccinated.
Mm-hmm. So people in New York basically support at least some form of vaccine passports, at least when it comes to college students being able to return to campus.
Absolutely.
A step in that direction. Now, Steve, President Joe Biden has had his ups and downs since taking office, depending upon who you talk to. You talk to New Yorkers. What do New Yorkers think about the president and the job he has done to date?
Well, overall, the voters of New York give President Biden high grades. 62% of New Yorkers say they view Joe Biden favorably, compared to 34% who view him unfavorably. When it comes to the job that he's doing as president, 53% say he's doing either an excellent or good job as president, compared to 45% who say he's doing only a fair or poor job. So Biden doing well right now. But it's important to point out, huge, not surprising, huge partisan divide. When it comes to his favorability, 86% of Democrats view Biden favorably. Independents, down the middle, 48 favorable, 48 unfavorable. And Republicans, nearly 3/4 of them, 73% of Republicans have an unfavorable view of the president.
It seems like independents in this state, their power, their influence is growing. And in the years to come, in the not too distant future to come, in races for governor, especially in a year and a half, and maybe in the next presidential race too, what independents have to say in the state might be what sways an election one way or the other.
Oh, absolutely. Look, we have reached the point where in New York, there are as many independent voters as there are Republican voters. They are as big a block. So we talk about D versus R in New York, roughly, in round numbers, half the electorate is Democrat, a quarter is Republican, and a quarter is independent.
So maybe New York State now is DIR, Democrat, Independent, and Republican.
We're getting close to that. Yeah, absolutely.
Getting close to that. Yeah. You know, GIFs out there in social media. Well, when it comes to politics in New York, I guess now it's DIRs the way it stands. Steve Greenberg, thank you as always.
My pleasure, John. Look forward to it.
All right, Steve Greenberg here on Westchester Talk Radio. Steve Greenberg, Siena Research Institute, Pollster at Siena College outside Albany. And we here at Westchester Talk Radio are produced by Sharc Creative on the beat in Westchester, made possible by Entergy, the Indian Point Energy Center in Buchanan. We thank them for all they did for our communities all throughout the region through the years. Also by Robeson Oil, the house that service built by White Plains Hospital. Special thanks to our friends at White Plains Hospital for all they've done throughout the COVID pandemic, and by Michael Labriola Landscape Design and Construction in Armonk. Catch all of our Westchester, Rockland, Putnam, Dutchess, Orange, and Fairfield County programming on our YouTube channel, Sharc Creative YouTube.